Good morning and welcome. I'm Tracy Strading, Director of the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Funds at MI-UCP, and I'm happy to introduce to you today Elizabeth Camfield, who is the STEMM-UP Specialist at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. In this role, she oversees the administration of the Disability Innovation Fund grant awarded to MRS by the USRSA. Liz brings to this role personal experience with congenital hearing loss, as well as professional experience with grant administration and project management. Brian Smith, the Deputy Director of MCTI, the Michigan Career and Technical Institute, has worked at Michigan Career and Technical Institute since 2001 when he developed the Step Up Remedial Education Program. Brian was instrumental in combining career assessment services, Step Up, and the admissions department into the Career Readiness Center. Now, both of them have extensive backgrounds that they can share with you. I didn't go into all their letters and all their professional accomplishments, so if they want to share that, they will. And then Liz and Brian are going to present new post-secondary opportunities for youth transitioning to work with the assistance of Michigan Rehabilitation Services. So take it away, Brian.
Thank you very much, Tracy. You bet. Sure. Thank you. Let me get my screen shared here. Okay. I appreciate the introduction. I'm Brian Smith from Michigan Career and Technical Institute, and here today to talk to you about exploring MCTI as a post-secondary option. So what is MCTI? Well, we're an accredited post-secondary institution that provides career and technical education. Career assessment services is a primary program along with our 13 trade training programs. We're designed for students with disabilities, and we're located halfway between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. Oops, sorry. Okay. We share with our accrediting body the vision of career and technical education to prepare students for careers in specific skilled trades, applied sciences, and technologies, and that technical colleges are mainly and singularly focused on preparing students for the world of work. So facts about MCTI: we're located on 72 beautiful acres directly on Pine Lake. And we've been in operation since 1944. We started as a Michigan Veterans Vocational School. We have dormitories that house 180 students and also 2 and 3 bedrooms, apartments on campus. I mentioned our 3 main areas: career assessment services, remediation services, and our 13 occupational programs accredited by the Council on Occupational Education. And you do not have to have an IEP, a high school diploma, or a GED to attend. So MRS is connected to the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, and we are connected to MRS, which is Michigan Rehabilitation Services, who has vocational counselors statewide working with customers and businesses to pursue and retain careers. And if you're referred from MRS, which the majority of our students are, the tuition, room, and board are free. Typical day at MCTI is we work all week, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 3:30. There are 2 breaks and a lunch throughout that. And then on Fridays, we end 1 hour early on 2:30. Both our culinary and custodial training programs, times may vary based on training needs. And MCTI is more than just training. It's living in dorms. So we have suite style dorms. So we provide 3 meals on both weekends and weekdays. And we make sure that the students are on board with living independently through room inspections. All our rooms are accessible. And students, can bring their video games and mini refrigerators. We have a fully secure campus with dorm fire and safety on staff 24 hours a day. It's the independent living skills and the socialization that occurs within the dormitory that really enhance the student's self-efficacy. Our support services at MCTI were comprehensive training facility with counseling, medical services, occupational therapists, interpreters, social coaching. We make sure all of our students have the proper accommodations and assistive technology for success. Now we have a leisure services department that's second to none, with a Olympic-sized pool, a bowling alley, weight room, gym, an archery range. And of course, at the employment readiness runs throughout. Here's a simple flow chart of MCTI. You open your vocational rehab case and you get referred to MCTI. You go through career assessment services and the training programs. I'll talk about those in a minute. But the ultimate goal is competitive integrated employment, and apprenticeships and externships and internships are a pathway to that. So our career assessment services is a 3-week session where students that are interested in coming to MCTI, we assess aptitudes, abilities, and interests for readiness into employment and including independent living. Students get a chance to explore trade options that best suit their abilities. And we know that our students need remedial services. That is a big part of what we offer. We addressed our students' needs for remediation in math, reading, and basic trade competencies directly in our occupational programs during the first term. These competencies are aligned to both industry and trade. And here are 13 occupational training programs. They really address a wide range of interests and abilities. 7 programs are in the technical trades, 2 health careers, and 4 are in service industries. Our focus on training is for entry-level employment. So it's perfect for transition. It's perfect if there's not a lot of background knowledge. We start from square one and we focus on entry-level employment. We also drive all of our learning competency-based. We don't put a lot of hours and restrictions around our learning, but rather competency-based. And we're, like I mentioned, focused on this employment. And those expectations are spelled out right from the beginning. Trade recommendations for students are made working with the vocational counselor, and each program does have recommended entry. So here's our demographics. I mentioned we serve individuals with disabilities. This is a 3-year snapshot. A lot of the disabilities remain constant. One that's been on the rise is now our leading disability, ASD, and it continues to rise at MCTI. And our outcomes, we focus heavily on student success through graduation and employment. Again, another 3-year snapshot. We're always above 75% and consistently at 80% for graduation rates, employed in trade, and employed for at least 90 days. And so talking about employment and placement, I was asked to emphasize a little bit on what's hot right now and what's new, especially for individuals with disabilities. And these are some grants that have been obtained by the Department of Leo. And the one that we're working with right now specifically targets the underrepresented population. It works perfectly for our customer base, and it allows us to look at apprenticeships in new industries in new ways. So we're expanding to new industries, and you can set up apprenticeships now for 1 year. And so that's always good to follow our customer a little bit longer. And get them into a program that's going to be credentialed. So all of this is administered through MCTI or Michigan Works, depending on who you're working with. 5 main components to apprenticeship, just try to make it as easy as possible. But the employers are the foundation of every apprenticeship. It starts and ends with them. They call all the shots, but it is structured on the job learning where a mentor works with the apprentice. What makes it registered is related technical instruction. So in enters MCTI or any community college or community-based training program. And the apprentice is employed, and not only employed, but guaranteed wage increases for skill gains. The 5th and most important is this nationally industry recognized credential from the United States Department of Labor. The benefits are on two sides. So it's the employer and the apprentice both really working together, investing in each other long term, and with the idea of having a career. So not just a job. So it allows businesses are having a hard time filling their workloads, and this is a way to bring people in, and it's a way to keep them. They can customize their training, and it can be delivered by a mentor, is what they call it, or an experienced individual right on the job. For the apprentice, they earn while they learn. There's no debt. They get usually competitive or better salaries, and it's that hands-on learning where they can apply their technical instruction immediately. To pull this off, there's a lot of key roles in the community that engage in this. And so, like I said, the employer drives the whole thing, the on-the-job learning and the instruction. They pick the provider and the content. They select their mentor, and then you have support services through MRS, Michigan Works, and of course these grants. Intermediaries, which I'll talk about in a minute, manage this for the employer. The last thing the employer wants is more paperwork and more systems to follow. So you have intermediaries, MCTI is one, and 16 Michigan Works locations are as well. And I mentioned the related instructions, which makes these registered, and that has to come from, accredited training, MCTI, community college, community training centers. How do you start an apprenticeship? Well, find the employer that's willing to hire and sponsor a new apprentice, or find an employer that currently has apprenticeship training. Because there are these funds that are available, you'll be a hero coming in, especially if there's already an apprenticeship training program in place. For the most part, it's 80% of it is on-the-job learning. Approximately 20% is the related instruction with this wage increase and career path. So the employer directs it all. 3 ways to look at this. The train in place traditional model that we do, come to MCTI, we train you, we place you. That can be molded into an apprenticeship that's called front end loaded, where the instruction's done when the customer starts. Place and train. You can use apprenticeship, place and train. It's sort of a different model, right? Bend our mind a little bit, but put your customer right into employment. They do their instruction simultaneous with the on-the-job learning. Or upskill the workforce. Find an employee that you need to keep and set them on a track for a promotion through apprenticeship. I won't get into this, but these are the boring check marks that the intermediary, MCTI, and 16 Michigan Works locations have to perform for the employer as the liaison to the Department of Labor. So as you can imagine, there's state and federal involved here. There's a few forms and a few systems, but that's what we're trained to do, to take that workload off of the employer and help them manage it through. And then, of course, follow the apprentice till the end. I'll circle back on how do I get to MCTI. So students don't apply directly to MCTI. It's 18 years or older. And you're referred to MCTI through one of the 4 agencies, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, who I've already talked about, the Michigan Bureau for Services for Blind Persons, United States Department of Veterans Affairs, and private rehabilitation agencies. Just some contact information, email admissions, email address here, a link for the application for vocational employment services at MRS, our direct phone number, which I can always be reached at. We have a nice website you should look at, michigan.gov/MCTI. It has student testimonials and has some video tours. And then, of course, our student resources are also on the michigan.gov website. So that's what I have to share. And let's see, I'll turn it over here to Liz.
You're muted, Liz, just so you know.
Thank you, because the button disappeared on me. I don't know why. Can you confirm that you can see my presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. So hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Camfield, and I am the STEMM-UP coordinator at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. As Tracy said earlier, I do have significant hearing loss, and I wear hearing aids in both ears, except for today I'm wearing earbuds. Just works better for me today. So I want to talk today about STEMM-UP, which is a new project that we have at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. And I do just want to note really quickly before I launch into this that we have a lot of partners in this project. I'll be talking more about those partnerships, but our university partners are really the ones who are providing a lot of the services that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm really on the administrative side of things, so I can answer a lot of questions, but there may be some questions that you have that I can't necessarily answer just because I am not part of those organizations, and I'm not, like, I don't know their policies and procedures. But if you have questions I can't answer, I'm more than happy to dive into that, get those answers for you. And of course, my contact information will be at the end. You can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to the STEMM-UP program directly to get answers. So with all of that being said, I do need to start this presentation off with a funding acknowledgement and disclaimer. This project is 100% funded by the U.S. Department of Education through the Rehabilitation Services Administration. And this is a 5-year project that started in October of 2021 and will go through September of 2026. The total award made by the Rehabilitation Services Administration to Michigan Rehabilitation Services is $15.8 million, and that covers the entire 5-year period. And Michigan State University, Louisiana Rehabilitation Services, and Southern University Baton Rouge are subrecipients in this project. And they are our main partners, although we do have others. Just as a quick disclaimer, the contents of this presentation do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement. All of that being said, there are 3 things that I ask people to keep in mind when I'm talking about this project. And the first is that this is a multi-state project being implemented in both Michigan and Louisiana, which is why you see Michigan State University, Louisiana Rehabilitation Services, and Southern University mentioned in the slide. But for the purposes of today's presentation, I am going to focus on MRS and Michigan State University. The second thing I ask people to keep in mind is that this is a demonstration project that is being implemented in 6 of the 13 districts in Michigan. This is it's a really exciting project, but it is new. So we needed to start small, figure out all of our lessons that we need to learn before we roll this project out statewide, which is the ultimate goal after September of 2026. The third thing is that this project is rooted in social cognitive career theory, which
I'm sorry, Liz, can I bother you for 1 second? We have an individual who I is asking you to slow down and speak a little louder.
Okay.
I'm sorry to bother you.
Oh, no, not a problem, because everything just kind of moved around on me and I can't see that feedback. So thank you. I will certainly slow down. And so the third thing that I ask people to keep in mind is that this project is rooted in social cognitive career theory, which the university partners that we have are a lot better equipped to talk about. But boiled down to 1 sentence, basically, social cognitive career theory says that all of our experiences, the resources available to us, our surroundings, our families and our friends and our school, our experiences when we're first starting in the workforce, all of these things guide our decision making and the choices that we make. So I hope that starts to become clear as I talk about this project, like why that is so important to this project. But again, the university partners really can talk more about that. So if you have questions about that, please just feel free to email me and I'll get you whatever information you need. So on to the fun part of the presentation. STEMM-UP is a job readiness program that aims to get people with disabilities from underserved communities into science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. When we talk about individuals with disabilities, this is a very broad group, obviously, but because this grant was awarded to Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and it is a vocational rehabilitation grant. The people who join STEM-UP need to be customers at Michigan Rehabilitation Services before they can be referred to STEM-UP. That's just one really important piece to note. The other thing is that when we talk about underserved communities, we are also including rural areas in or rural communities in our definition of underserved. When we talk about working with people with disabilities and getting them into STEM field, we're going about this in a number of ways. The first is that we have a job readiness program that is being led by Michigan State University. We are also developing a number of community partnerships that's being done by Michigan Rehabilitation Services Business Network Division and by Michigan State University. And of course, because our project is focusing on people from underserved communities, there's this third element where MRS is looking at our policies and procedures related to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. Depending on the time that we have today, I might talk a little bit more about this. This is a really exciting piece. I do want to focus more on the job readiness training and the practical application, but there's so much happening behind the scenes that I thought I needed to acknowledge when I talk about this project. So let's get started with job readiness training. Job readiness training focuses mostly on soft skills development in addition to internships or apprenticeships. Michigan State University has designed these modules, and they have career pathway coordinators who will be working with customers as they go through the STEM-UP program. This training is broken down into several modules, including an e-community of wisdom and practice, which is essentially a forum where STEM-UP participants can talk with each other about their experiences and kind of lean on each other for support. There's also an element of career assessment and planning, and this includes career exploration. So you could have somebody who they might know that they want to go into the medical field, for example, but they don't know what they want to do in medicine. This is a good place where the career pathway coordinators can talk about interest and goals and what might be a good fit for the person. But you could also have somebody who might have kind of a general interest in, say, biology, but they don't know if they want to go into that, so they want to get more information. STEM-UP is a good program for talking through what that might look like, and then getting into more detail about, if you go into this type of job, this is what your day-to-day might look like, just to help set some expectations. These trainings also include components such as workplace socialization skills development, employment readiness skills development, managing impressions and getting through job interviews, work incentives and benefits counseling, disability rights, job accommodations and self-advocacy, mentoring and motivational speakers. Specifically, we're working with people from STEM fields so that they can talk to our job seekers about the experiences that they had as people with disabilities, and how they got to where they are, and the things that they really like about their job. And then there's these components of virtual and in-person field trips where people can, go see what an environment might look like. Maybe they haven't had that kind of exposure, and it's really daunting when people don't know what they might be getting into, so they can actually see for themselves what, their offices might look like, or what, their clinic might look like, or whatever it is they want to get into. And then finally, the paid internship, and that could go back to apprenticeships as well. And the internship, it really has to align with what the customers want to do. If they're in a field, or if they're in a program where they have to take a certain internship that isn't paid, we don't want to force people to do multiple internships. So it's really going to come down to what's going to work best for the customer when they get referred. But the internship, the paid internship, is something that we're really striving for. As much as possible, that's what we want to get people into, because there's a strong relationship between having the paid internship and getting the job in, possibly even that company, but at least in that field. If people have questions about how assistive technology can fit in with their career goals, they can also talk about this with their career pathway coordinators. And another thing I want to note is that these trainings are self-paced, and they can be done remotely or they can be done in person. The job seekers who join STEM-UP will be completing a lot of these training modules online using a learning management system that has been created specifically for STEM-UP. So to join STEM-UP, job seekers have to have a disability and be an MRS customer. They need to be interested in STEM. Like I said, that could be a very vague interest in STEM where they're not really sure yet, or that they know what field they want to get into, but they don't necessarily know what job or career they want. The job seeker needs to reside in a STEM-UP district, and they need to be able to complete trainings independently or with accommodation. So on this slide, I have a map of Michigan with the STEM-UP districts highlighted. Like I mentioned earlier, we're only doing this in 6 districts right now. And the first district is Marquette, which spans the entire Upper Peninsula and is shown on this slide in blue. The second district is Northern, which is the northern part of the Lower Peninsula, highlighted on this map in orange. The third district is Eastern, which is essentially the thumb area and expands all the way over to Genesee County, and that's highlighted on this map in yellow. Then we have the Oakland district, which is on this map in green. And then finally, we have the Detroit and Wayne districts, which are in the southeastern part of Michigan, and they are highlighted on this map in purple. Unfortunately, this map is broken down by counties rather than by districts, so I just had to color all of them with purple rather than breaking out Detroit and Wayne separately. But this should give you a sense of where a person needs to reside in order to join STEM-UP, at least for now. Michigan aims to serve 510 customers over the 5-year project period. And to date, we have received 70 referrals. We just started taking referrals earlier this year. I want to say it was around late spring, early summer. And just as a side note, students at MCTI can join STEM-UP as long as they are from the STEM-UP district. So if you have questions about that, please feel free to ask. And as I mentioned earlier, Michigan State University has career pathway coordinators who cover these districts. So I want to talk a little bit about what the customer journey will look like getting into STEM-UP. Because customers need to be an MRS customer before joining STEM-UP, anyone who is not already a customer needs to go through the MRS intake and eligibility process. Once they're an MRS customer, the customers and counselors can talk about STEM-UP, and if customers are interested, the counselors will make the referrals over to STEM-UP. After the referrals are sent to MSU, MSU's career pathway coordinators will then work with the customers to do STEM-UP intakes and assessments. Assessments are used to talk with the customers and learn more about their background, their interest, their strength, and their goal, really to learn about what might be a good fit with them. And then the career pathway coordinators will talk with them about, what they think might work, and they'll come to an agreement. They'll figure that out together. And then once they come to an agreement, then they can get started in the training. And throughout that entire process, the career pathway coordinators will be talking with the counselors about what's been done so far and next steps. The time commitment for STEM-UP is really going to depend on the customer. This project is intended to meet the customers where they are. So some might complete it faster than others. It's just going to depend on, whether the person has a job, how much time they can commit. Are they going through a program right now and they can only commit 10 hours versus 20 hours? It's just going to depend. And then there is that internship piece where some internships are longer than others. But the initial estimate is that STEM-UP could take anywhere between 6 to 9 months. Again, it's going to depend on the person and their goals. So there is some flexibility built into that. Customers will be working with both the career pathway coordinators at MSU and with counselors as they go through STEM-UP. So the CPC works specifically on STEM-UP, and then any other vocational rehabilitation needs that customers have will be figured out with the counselors. Customers can expect to talk about reasonable accommodations and assistive technology needs. And I jumped over a really important part. Customers will need to have access to computers and technology or internet in order to join STEM-UP. So that doesn't mean anybody who doesn't have access can't join, but it does mean that there'll be some conversation between the customers and the MRS counselors as far as how that can be done. So just know that there may be some further work to be done in that area if a person doesn't have access to computer and internet. Customers can also expect to complete a number of forms, including releases, both at MRS and at Michigan State University. There's some confidentiality requirements that need to be met. And so unfortunately, there is some paperwork involved, but we try to make that as painless as possible. And then, there are a number of assessments that have to be done. My understanding is that the initial assessment really takes between 45 minutes and an hour. So it's not too burdensome of a process, but it's just to give you an idea of what to look forward to. So now that I've talked about the training program, I want to talk about what we are doing with our community partners. To start with employers, we can't achieve our goals of getting people into STEM jobs without talking to STEM employers. And as part of this project, we are not only building new relationships, but we're strengthening our current relationships with employers. Michigan Rehabilitation Services has a business network division, and they are heavily involved in this part of the project. STEM-UP offers a number of ways that STEM companies can participate. And these include providing mentoring for job seekers, providing externships and job shadowing opportunities, internships and apprenticeships, and then of course, hiring job seekers if that is a possibility. Again, this project is about meeting our customers where they are, and this includes businesses. So businesses may only have the capacity to do one or two of these things and not all of these things. Another option would be, providing on-site or virtual tours of your facilities. If that's really all you can commit to at this point in time, great. We would love to partner with you on this. We are also working on building up relationships with community rehabilitation organizations, educational organizations, service providers, and other community organizations. And people can get involved. You can ask questions if you learn about STEM-UP, but you want to know more. If you want to get involved with the project, we do have a community business advisory board. There may be some potential to join there. It depends on how many people are on the board at any given moment. You can request training. We can connect you with MRS's business network division to learn more about training and accommodation for employees with disabilities. And you can help spread the word about the project. So if you know somebody who has a disability and they might be interested in a STEM field, you can just let them know that we exist, direct them to our website, have them call us, and we're happy to talk through the project with them. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing some work on our diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion policies and procedures. So earlier in this project, Michigan State University looked at MRS's policies and procedures as they relate to DEAI. And this, they also did a number of focus groups and surveys, which were completed by MRS customers, by employers, by community rehabilitation organizations, as well as a number of staff at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Once they concluded the needs assessment, MSU then provided MRS with a report outlining their observations and recommendations. So MRS has been reviewing this report and figuring out our next steps. We are going to be meeting at the end of this month to lay out strategic plans for addressing these recommendations. And these recommendations were made in regard to MRS DEAI training for our staff, training for our community partners. There were recommendations about community outreach and reaching people that we aren't currently reaching. And there were recommendations made with regard to technology, making sure that what we're doing is accessible, and then of course, keeping up to date on our technology, because what we're using today may be out of date tomorrow. So how can we keep on top of that? It's especially important in this day and age where services have become or are available hybrid or completely remote, and there's more reliance on technology. We need to ensure that what we're doing is accessible to all of our customers. So with all of that being said, I've got my contact information on this slide, and I also have the contact information for STEMM-UP if you want to reach out to the STEMM-UP program, and our website is stemmup.org if you want to check that out. At this point in time, I don't know. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can start focusing on questions, because I can't see any that have come up.
Sure. I'll go back first as people are gathering their thoughts. Now, there are several options. First of all, thank you both for your presentations. I should start there. I'm very excited about what you're doing and the changes I see, the things that Brian talked about that are happening at MCTI, and I'm stunned and excited about the STEM-UP program because I had not heard about it before this. And so I just want to start there before I get deep into the questions. It's wonderful. I can think of multiple people who we have helped to purchase equipment that are in a position that if they live in the area, I think would be very interested. So I will definitely be reaching out to people to see, number one, if they are aware of it or interested in it. So that's just my individual take, is that's stunning and wonderful and very exciting. So the first question was earlier during Brian's presentation. One of the questions from Andrew was, oh, and I also want to say, you can type your questions in the Q&A. You can also type them in the chat if that's easier, or you can raise your hand. I can unmute you and you can ask your question directly to them as an accommodation, if that's easier for you. So whatever works best for people. So the first question is, does MCTI accept students that have attained a certificate of completion from a high school?
Yes, absolutely. We consider ourselves the opportunity school, which means you do not have to have any sort of diploma or GED. And we do accept certificate of completion. We just willingness to learn and go to work.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So that's a good first start. Let me
Really
look at
is.
the next one. All right. So Jeffrey Astron, do customers need to take academic placement tests, i.e. ACT, SET, GRE for STEM-UP?
No, they do not.
Okay. All right. Someone else asks, what about students in legal guardianships? I'll let Brian start there. And then if you have something, Liz, I'd like for you both to talk about your programs and what policies around that might be.
Right. We have students at our school that are under legal guardianship. So that just means that, all the communication has to include the guardian. And that's just overarching in our main files for our students when that's the case.
As we know, here in Michigan, there are way too many folks in that situation. So as an advocate, I just want to talk to people about consideration of less restrictive measures. It's always something I want to add to that conversation. And then Liz, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's the same with us. We've had a number of referrals where people have guardians, and it's really just a matter of getting those releases signed so that the guardian, that they can be part of the conversation. But absolutely, there's no restrictions on that.
Right.
Well, and it sounds like that the respect for the individual who's in that situation is there, and that their decision making within the realm of what can be respected under that situation is respected. So that's great. All right. So I have another one. who says, this is great. This is Danielle. This is great. I have senior high school students graduating this year with a certificate of completion. Oh, I have a senior. He really wants a college experience. We are definitely exploring these options. Thank you both.
Awesome. Glad to hear that.
Great. Anyone else with either thoughts that they want to express, questions, hopefully, or other ideas that they want to add at this point? I'm watching for you to either raise your hand or type in the. Now, did either of those questions or anything you've thought of since you presented? I know, Brian, it's been a few minutes. Did you think of anything you wanted to add?
No, I would just say that, you get the full experience at the school. We are a vocational and technical training center, but it certainly feels like a college. And many of our students say they're coming to college because we have the residential facility. The other piece I'll add, there's only 7 states in the nation that have a dedicated VR training center run by the state and connected to the VR program. So we're really lucky in the state of Michigan to have an MCTI. So I sure hope everybody takes advantage of it.
Yeah, I want to add, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said great.
Well, I want to add, I am, I've only been at Michigan Rehabilitation Services as an employee for a year. I was a customer once upon a time, but I recently had the chance to go down to MCTI, and the drive, it felt like a vacation, and the facilities are amazing. And what I loved about it was there's some possibility to get some hands-on, even just learning about it before you sign up. You can really go see what it's like to stand in the environment and get your hands on some tools or whatever you might be interested in. And so MCTI, we were actually talking with MCTI about how our project can work together, or MCTI is not a project, but how our programs can work together, because STEMM-UP does some assessment that MCTI doesn't, and MCTI does a ton of assessment that we don't do. And it's really, I remember talking with the director, and the programs combined can really work with the whole person. There's that soft skill building that STEMM-UP offers. So just on the whole, I'm a big fan of MCTI. If you haven't been out there, I strongly encourage it.
When I toured it some years ago, and what I remember thinking is that the dorm looked very much like the dorm that I lived in when I was in college. And as a person with a disability, I think that opportunity to have that experience is exciting. So I think it's definitely something that has some value for folks that are interested in at least the what's offered there in terms of as a career. Okay, Dolores
I will
says,
add one thing. We are having an open house right now as I speak, and we hold them frequently. Our next one will be in September. So you just call our main number, and if you want to come visit, we hold open house for an entire day. We try to do it once a month or once every other month.
great information. Good. And it's a beautiful place to just sit and have a picnic when you're done with your tour.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So Dolores says, thank you for the information. My grandson is on the ADS spectrum. He will receive a certificate of completion. So this is really helpful information.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else with questions or thoughts that they want to share?
I do want to add, I don't think I elaborated on this in my presentation. I should have. When we talk about STEM fields, a lot of people tend to think engineers and doctors, they're jobs that can take 8-10 years. Sometimes it feels like 50. And, that's a goal those are goals we could support. But we're also highly supportive of certificate programs, and there's a number of jobs that we can help people work towards. We're thinking very inclusively in our definition of STEM. So just want to make sure I highlight that.
Yeah, I started thinking about, I toured some years ago, I think it was Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, and I met their highest productive person who prepares the trays for surgery. And she's a person with a significant disability who was living in her own condo near the place, it was amazing. She was amazing. And there were other people I met other people around the hospital that worked in the medical field with disabilities through multiple programs around this. It just makes a huge difference because especially for myself, I have a strange facility for numbers that I think makes it easier for me to manage mathematics, but I know there are other people with interest and opportunities around employment in the STEM industry, and I think that's wonderful. Oh, so I've got some more things here. Deborah is saying she thinks that there's an IQ level required for MCTI. Is that correct?
Right, so there we do have a level that a minimum, but anything that's below that we'll interview. So we're not hard and fast, but we are training for competitive integrated employment. So that does make it a little different, but it doesn't usually exclude a lot of people.
Okay, and people would have the right, don't they, at that point have the right to ask for a reconsideration of a decision?
Absolutely.
Because always with state services, there are opportunities for people to say, I don't think this was a fair decision.
Right.
So I just want to point out to people that that's available to them also.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And Jack, I'm sorry, did you have something else about that, Brian?
No, I was just going to
Okay.
say, it's all about aligning with our training and our industry and employment. That's just all feeds together.
Sure. Okay. And Jackie has a question. She says, I apologize if I missed this. When does MRS think they will offer STEM-UP across the entire state? Thank you for including the rural areas as underserved.
Yeah, so that was when I was speaking very quickly, and I apologize for that. I speak fast by nature, and I'm always having to slow myself down. And so that will be around September 2026 that we would roll that out statewide. So another thing I want to add is somebody could be working in a STEM field, but maybe they want to go in a different direction. Maybe they want to promote, but there's still some skill set, there's some training they need. Even if you've been an MRS customer before and you're not anymore, or, so in the future, this would apply if you can't join STEM-UP now. In the future, the aim would be that you could join STEM-UP then. So hopefully, I mean, if you can't join now, hopefully you can in the future.
I gotta tell you, it really made me wish what Marguerite just said in the chat, which is, I wish I was young now. I do think that the opportunity to pursue, I have a young nurse who we helped to purchase glasses for her nursing curriculum. I'm thinking I got to look at where she lives. Like I need to know these things, and I want you to both know that we work very closely with MRS here to fund assistive technology that maybe is above and beyond the plan. So a note can be written as an example for a computer to give them computer access. But the individual might say, I'd rather have an air book, right? And that's not the lowest meeting of the need, but maybe they also are interested in music. So we can have the plan written so that they can choose the item they want and self-fund through other ways that we can help them to get those items at no interest. So and pay that difference, or something that maybe is not included in their plan but might enhance their experience while they're participating in these programs. So we'd love to help people to participate. And also with these programs, as we move forward in demonstrations of how they work, there will be hopefully a spread of these ideas. That's what happens when we start with a pilot program, is that things can spread from there. So we don't know when other areas might be offered the same opportunity. I have a hand raised in here. So Marguerite, I'm going to turn on your ability to speak here so you can ask your question. And you'll have to unmute yourself now. There, I'm going to send you an unmute request, Marguerite, and if you want to speak, there you go.
Okay. Thank you. Back in the 80s, I was part of the evaluation program at MITI, but it was not ready for me, and I decided to go into another direction, which was to attend the Detroit Adult Education Program. And at that time was big in getting employment, but some employers did not want to hire me because of the certificate that I've got, even though there are A's and B's.
Okay, so you had trouble with employment from there even after your certificate?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, and that's something that we're looking at as part of this project when the Business Network Division is out talking with employers about this project, working with them to make sure that they're accessible, that they understand, you know, stereotyping, and they understand a person's needs. So, you know, to avoid exactly that, just, you know, to encourage employers to employ people with disabilities and provide support for those employers when they don't know what to do.
I mean, what's interesting to me is because we're working on a project also for underserved populations in terms of funding. Funding's available to everyone, but we're trying to make sure that those folks in those same areas you showed and in the same populations that you're talking about know about our program, because we don't get applications and the, what do they call that? The joining of those two things, having a disability and also some other reason why you may not be aware or you may not have access to training opportunities or learning opportunities or employment opportunities is really key, because that when you have that intersectionality between we know that people with disabilities are not served are often left out of opportunities. And then we have other reasons why people are left out of opportunity. So it's a perfect storm, really. And so this sounds like a wonderfully innovative and exciting idea, both what you're bringing at MCTI with new thoughts and ideas around that, and also what the STEM-UP project is doing. So I'm very excited about it. Anybody else have any thoughts, either of you, before I open it up again to them? Anything else you want to add? Brian, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, it's just, I think Marguerite had mentioned that she was at MCTI in the 80s. You know, it looks a lot different now. I mean, the facility is still the same, but back in the 80s, we didn't even have remedial. You know, if a student, you know, had aptitudes for a training program, but didn't have abilities and just needed to close some skill gaps, we had to send them back into the community. And a lot of times that we wouldn't see them return. So, you know, we've added remedial training and we've added services. It does look a little bit different than the 80s.
Great. Okay, any other thoughts from the audience at this point? I'm going to give it a 3 to 1-ish moment here to either type or raise your hand. I know it takes me a second. I'll give you a second to click that real quick before I move on. All right. if I see it come up as I wrap this up, I can grab you. But I'm just going to start with, this was tremendously interesting, and I thank you both for sharing with us what's going on and available to people with disabilities as we all work to make things more inclusive here in this wonderful state of Michigan. So thank you to Brian and to Liz for being here and sharing your information and being open to thoughts and ideas as we talk about this moving forward. I'm really thrilled and will be following up, Liz, to see what you're doing and if there's any way we can help people. I want to invite everyone to be with us on Thursday, September 14th at 10 a.m. for another AT topic. It most likely will be transition related still, but I'm still working on it at the moment. So join us on that Thursday, September 14th for a new presentation. I want to thank everyone for attending. It looks like Marguerite has her hand up, so I'm going to turn it back over to her for a moment to allow her to speak. And thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. If you'll hit that, Marguerite, go ahead.
Yes. Please to all of the young people on this call, please take the advantage of this program. Please.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that,
You bet.
endorsement
Thank you.
of taking advantage. That's lovely. And thank you both again for being here. Thank you everyone
you.
for attending. And
My pleasure.
and I hope to have you back on for an update maybe next year. So thank you both.
Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
All right, everyone.